Okay, talking about the commercial clocks. So, the commercial clocks, they made them with what they call 8, 12, 16. I think some had 20 or 24 um, inch clock faces. This is out of an 8 inch. This is out of a 12 inch. Okay. Now, what what's common to these and what's specific to them, I couldn't tell you. All right, it might be that everything is the same size, but it may be that some things are different. I don't know. But I can tell you a little bit about what I do know. Okay, so when you take out the movement from one of these commercial clocks, they're not screwed in. Okay, early time-only clocks from the 30s and 40s, they use screws here to hold the front plate to the back plate. And I haven't done enough with commercial clocks to know if the early commercial clocks use screws or rivets. I've only messed with ones made in the 40s and the 50s, and every one of them has been riveted. So, anyway, these are the rivets that I'm talking about. Okay, and they can't just be screwed out. So, what you have to do is you have to get a Dremel tool and you have to just grind these down. Now, that's what I've done on this one, the 12 inch. So you can see these areas where I've ground out the rivets. So when I do that, I can then remove this top plate. This is called the front plate. Okay, so this is the front plate. I can then remove that, and this is what I'm looking at. And I will tell you that sometimes these parts will, when you take off the front plate, they'll be stuck to the front plate. But this is the way they were put in there at the factory, and then the front plate was put on top and riveted in place. So different parts that we're looking at here, we got the power indicator, okay, and that's something that you can just pull up and out. Then this comes off next. This is the hour hand sleeve. The hour hand of the clock is actually going over this sleeve when the clock is all together. Okay, the next thing that comes is the setting gear. And these commercial clocks, you've got the setting gear down here at the bottom. Okay, so that would be the next thing I'd take off. Then the next thing I'd take off is the minute hand sleeve. This is actually where the minute hand is going to attach on the clock when it's all put back together again. So it's called the minute hand sleeve. I can pull that off. And then finally in here, we have the second hand shaft or second hand sleeve. I believe that Telechron GE refers to it as a second hand shaft or sweep shaft. So we've got to pull up and then over, and that comes out. So those are the parts right there. It's not a lot, really. Okay, so what I'm going to say first of all is, if you have gotten to this point, you've ground out the rivets and exposed these, you want to clean these parts. If there's a bunch of grime and gook, which is very typical, it can impede the clock's operation when you put it all back together again. So I have a ultrasonic cleaner, and I buy a special clock formula for cleaning clocks, but it's like $100 a gallon. And if you're just working on one clock, you want to get back into action, you don't want to do all that. What I will tell you is I have found Barasso to be a very effective cleaner for these clock parts. Okay, now I'm not referring to this. Okay, the set shaft, that is a finish on there, and if you put Barasso on it, it'll wipe the finish off. So I'm not going to clean that with Barasso. Also, this right here, if you put Barasso on that paint, it will wipe the paint off. So I'm not going to clean that with Barasso. But all of these gears, the back plate, the front plate, if I put Barasso on there, I get a cotton ball and rub, all that junk is going to come off of there. And so the more you get off, the better it bodes for the clock's function when it's all put back together again. Okay, so what I would do is I would clean all of these parts, and then the sequence to put them back together again would be start with the second hand shaft. Now, this is a big issue, okay? This thing right here is what sets the time on the clock, okay? And what you have is a spring and a lever, you have this gear, which is attached to a shaft, and then this intermediary post right here. So this is how it comes apart. First of all, we want to push this in, take pressure off that gear, and then this whole thing will pull out. And then the gear and shaft separates. Okay. And what I would do if I was working on this clock is I would clean all the gunk off of these before reassembly. Okay, but it gets a little bit tricky here. It's the only tricky part, really. You put the sweep hand shaft back in there, and then what you have to do is take this and put the gear and shaft back in there. All right, now understanding how this system works is a whole other thing, but basically this edge of this lever right here is going to contact underneath this gear and hold it up until you go to set the clock. When you set the clock, you pull it down. Okay, so this lever right here, when I put this back on there, I've got to make sure that this little edge right here is underneath the gear there, like that. Okay, and then I can reset the spring. This end of the spring goes under the back plate, and this part of the spring is going to go underneath this lever and hook around it. And why I say it gets sloppy now is because now you've got that tension on there. It's wanting to pull it up, but there's nothing holding it in place. Okay, but the next step in this procedure is to add the minute hand sleeve. So we're going to put the minute hand sleeve in there, and you'll notice how the minute hand sleeve, these gears mesh right here. Okay. The next step is to put the setting gear shaft gear on. Okay. Notice that the setting gear has a little gear on one side and a bigger gear on the other. So this is important. That smaller gear, and when I say small, if you look at it from the side, the big gear is taller. Okay, so the shorter gear has to go onto the post so that the larger gear is facing you. And you'll notice now that these gears spline. And then finally, as far as this goes, the hour hand sleeve goes on like this, and you'll notice that these gears spline. Now, the only thing left is to take our power indicator. That little nub at the bottom is right there, is going to go into that square hole, if you will. All right, but this is, for this to work properly, when you're looking at the power indicator, it's got this weird shape. That bit right there, okay, that bit right there needs to come in contact with the end of this lever right there. Okay, so when I put it in, I want to make sure I drop it down in there. I want to make sure that that part of the power indicator is contacting that, and then it should work correctly. Now, by the way, what I'll say about this power indicator, you notice it's dirty. I said don't clean it with Brasso. What I've found works is to take 3-in-1 oil, okay, and just put that on there. This will not remove the paint, but if I'm lucky, I can take that and just rub it around on whatever dirt and grime is on there and get it off. And you can see all that dirt and grime that's on this Q-tip. Okay, so I've significantly reduced it just doing that. I've resorted to repainting these sometimes. It's not hard to do, just red and kind of ivory colored white. But for now, I'll just show you that's what I get just by a quick cleaning with 4-in-1 oil. It's an improvement. So now that I've got all the pieces on the back plate where they're supposed to be. Now it's time for me to put the front plate on. And I just got two 2x4 scraps that I use for this. It makes it a little bit easier, and you'll see why in a second here. So what I'll do is I'll put the front plate on there like that, and then I'll take, the back plate, put the back plate on there with everything on there, and now here's the front plate. This is the power indicator sight window, so that's going to be at the top, and I'm going to just put it on top like this, and I use the center here to line it up, and then I'm going to have to shift it around and hold it together. And the worst part of this is trying to get the top stem of the power indicator to come through the hole in the front plate. As if by magic, when I just put it on there, it came through. That might not be the case with you. It usually is not the case that it just comes through, and usually it's going to be off to the side, and you have to get a toothpick or something and wiggle it around until that front post sets in that hole. Okay, so now we're ready to talk business, and it's not even a complication at all if you've ever tapped something. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my drill bit and I'm going to drill down into these holes here. Okay, and this is what I showed in the other video. Okay, but I didn't show a close-up, which I should have. This is what it says, 40-40 NC. And what I like about this is it comes with the drill bit I need and the tap I need. So I don't have to worry about any of that. Okay, got a set of these at Harbor Freight for cheap. So this is the smallest one. It came with 3 of them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my drill and I'm just going to drill down into these posts. Okay, and then once I've drilled down into the posts, I'm going to come back and I'm going to tap them. Now, like I say, 440, at some point when I was reading something and people working on these clocks were using this type of screw, so I just went with that. Can you use another type of screw? I imagine so. I mean, I imagine you can use, as long as, you know, you've got the right drill bit size. By the way, this drill bit size, it says on the back, is a number 43. Okay, you got the right size drill bit, you've got a tap that'll work, and you just have to make sure that the screws you use are going to go in there, right? So, and what I would do after I have not tapped this, if I tapped it, I would then put the screws in and tighten them down as much as I could, because this whole thing is supposed to be riveted together. Now here's something that is important, okay, to think about, and it's going to be the same on both of these. I'm going to show you on this one because it's together. If I replace these with screws, that screw head should not come above this dimple. There's these dimples right here. If you look at it from the side, you have a certain height. Okay, if I use a screw and the head is too big and it goes beyond that dimple, that's going to cause a problem. So I have to use a screw where when I screw it down in there, it's below this level, or at least flush with it. If I used a screw and the screw came up above the level of this dimple, it's going to push this whole thing off the clock face and screw everything up. Okay, so I wouldn't be, even because it's originally riveted, if I put in screws and they came up past these dimples, I would even take my Dremel and grind down the screw heads until they were below this level, because I leave enough metal on the screw, it'll hold it in place anyway. But ideally, I think the best thing to do is to use a screw that doesn't rise above the level of these dimples, and that way, if you want to take it apart again at some point in the future, or somebody else has to work on it, it's easy for them to do. So that's pretty much it. And talking specifically to Scott now, what you want to do is you want to simply tap these and add those screws. And I would recommend highly that you clean all the internal parts there before you put it all back together again. I don't know if you have a problem with your coil and your rotor, but I will just say this: the culprit for these clocks not working, 99% of the time, is this thing, the rotor. Okay, but the rotors can be re-oiled, and you can also get replacement coils from other clocks. People sell them on eBay, whatever. But if you get it all back together again and have a problem, it's probably going to be the rotor. It's a problem. The good news is you can remove the rotor and coil without having to take apart the whole clock. It's just those two field screws holding the rotor and the coil to the clock. Which, by the way, after you have this assembly all put back together again with screws, you can do the opposite of what you did when you took these two screws out. Okay. One thing I'll just tell you about is this: you're going to have a post, and when you put these screws back in, you got to see that this post goes through this hole in the back plate. Okay, if you're trying to get it in there, that post, and it's off to the side, you're not going to be able to get it. It can be frustrating. You have to guide that post through that hole and line up where the screws go through down into the back plate. All right, good luck.